10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. Thankful that you're here with us. We're live on CKLU 96.7 FM and CKLU.ca, both terrestrial radio and online radio. If you're online, you just click on the Radio Player Canada app and you can stream us. If you download it, you can take us with you and listen to us anywhere on your favorite device. We're also streaming live at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and the page. Also comment. We'll do our best to get your comments up on the screen for those watching, read for those listening, as well as you can catch the show on demand on those two platforms, along with X, formerly twitter.com/Sudbury News, and our Sudbury.news webpage, which we aggregate all the local news into one webpage. So it's going to be a great show today. We're getting off to a little bit of a late start today. Much to my chagrin, technology seems to be my Achilles heel this morning. But at the same time, we're here and we're going to have a great show regardless. Let's kick it off with a little bit of weather. Lots to talk about. We have some local news. There was a fire at the old hospital, St. Joe's Hospital. Wondering what's going on with that. There was a unfortunate incident where there's a 24-year-old male found deceased by that location as well a couple days before. So activity going on in that area doesn't seem to be, a fire and a death. So sad to hear of the tragedy for the family and the friends of that individual, and now a fire in the old St. Joe's building. So there's that locally, and then we're going to dive a little bit into the infiltration in Canada from outside sources, what it means. Kash Patel was on giving an interview the other day talking about how Canada's border is now worse than the Mexican one with fentanyl coming across. And could that be because of the infiltration in Canada that's been going on years and years and years through the ports of Vancouver? And are our authorities compromised, including bureaucrats and politicians and law enforcement? And we'll talk about that and more. And what is Canada and the new made for you if you don't like living in a country like this? Well, the government's got an answer for you. It's just to we'll help you. We'll send you off into the next world instead of giving you the services and the health care that your very high taxes are supposed to pay for. Well, we'll have your taxes pay for a medical procedure that will assist you in dying. Anyways, so that's the heavy show today. So almost like a bit of a warning at the beginning of it. It's going to be pretty heavy, but I'm sure our audience can handle it. And we'll be back with after the weather with news headlines and your comments and more right after this. And weather brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. Currently it's 8 degrees. Light rain shower. Currently, periods of rain today amount to 10 millimeters, up to 10 millimeters of rain today. High of 9. Tonight, periods of rain, another 10 to 15 millimeters, low of +5. Friday, periods of rain, 10 millimeters. So lots of rain coming at us. Tomorrow, just says periods of rain, not even a chance. So you're going to get it whether you like it or not. Then a 60% chance of rain on Saturday, high of 12. 30% chance of showers on Sunday with a high of 18 as the temperature getting a little cool starts to rise again at the latter part of the weekend. Monday, 18, mix of sun and cloud. Same thing for Tuesday. And then we're up into the 20s, 21 on Wednesday, mix of sun and cloud. So rainy during the weekend, and just in time for the next week, we'll have some sun. So just look at your satellite here. A lot of clouds everywhere. And that's your cyber weather, brought to you by cyberweather.ca. We'll be back with news headlines, your comments, and more right after this. And so, yes, we had some great guests on yesterday. We had Tom Price, we had Bob Johnston on, and they are critical of the city of Sudbury. They, Bob spends a lot of time with the homeless downtown, and so we had a really great conversation about the homeless situation and some of the critique or criticisms that he has about how the city deals with the homeless and opioid addiction and housing crisis and all of that. And then we had Tom Price on as well, who has analysis with the budget that the city has put forward and publicly set forward that the arena will cost $200 million. And in his analysis, it's going to cost far much greater than that, and far greater than the 200 million, and makes a case for it. And they will be putting on a workshop, or they're going to give a presentation, next Thursday at 6 at Grace Family Church, I believe. So, and then they're also doing another presentation as well. So if you want more information on that, I think you could just go to Bob Johnson's Facebook page, and he promotes all of that on there if you're interested in going. So I would encourage anyone who wants that perspective to just look at it compared to what the city is saying. And with that, we're going to have Mike Parent on the show tomorrow. He reached out to me yesterday, and I just saw the email this morning, and I said, for sure, Mike, tomorrow, come on the show. And so we've invited the city councilors to come on, and Mike hasn't been on for a bit. So we'll have him on, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about the budget and other things in the city. So make sure to send any questions you have for Mike to me at sudburynews@gmail.com before the show, because that's the way to get your question to him, or message me at facebook.com/sudburynews. Just go to the messenger and send me the question before the show, so that way I can look at it, be prepared for the questions that you have. If there's no questions, then as they're coming up on the screen and I'm having a conversation with Mike, it's sometimes impossible for me to pinpoint a question on the fly, just because I'm doing all the technical things. I'm hosting, trying to listen, and trying to be in the conversation and all that jazz, right? So I'd appreciate that. So good morning, Northern Hillbilly. Morning, Brian. Thanks for being on. And Nana, good morning. Blessings, everyone. Heart emoji, exclamation point. Judy, good morning to you, as well as Hazel. Prayer emoji, much needed these days. And Denise, blessings, everyone. And Belinda, good morning. Positive statement of the day. You say, forgive yourself for those choices you made when you didn't know you had better options. Focus on growing, moving on. Your next move matters more than your last mistake. Wonderful. And yes, you have to, applaud yourself for the progression that you make, regardless of the mistakes, instead of focusing on the mistakes, which, you have to take into account when you do things a certain way that doesn't work to your benefit. And then you analyze it and you go, okay, I could have done things better. And then you move on and you try the next time to do things better. And that's how instead of beating yourself up, that's the way we need to look at it, or else you'll be self-defeating and you won't progress as much. So you have to forgive yourself. Forgiveness is a huge part of life, and it's a great, wonderful thing that more people need to learn about it and know what it is and how it works and how it's going to serve you in your life, right? Okay, Marianne, good morning to you. Good morning, everyone from Raineyberry. Great weather if you are a duck. Yes, same here. And liked and shared as usual. Marianne, thank you very much. And Denise, good morning, everyone. All stay safe and healthy. Like and share. And I would encourage everyone to like and share. It gets the word out to everyone. Yes. And morning, Vin. And Jerome, good morning. All listening from work. Stay focused, strong, and have faith. Well, it looks like there's a theme to the show. We got forgiveness. We got faith here. Let's see what else we can add to the mix. And Belinda, when will someone take responsibility for the state of that hospital site? Yeah, you and most Sudburyans are asking that. Maybe that's a question we can pose to Mike tomorrow. What's up with that old St. Joe's Hospital? And when can we see some movement on that? And Marianne, my understanding is they couldn't tear it down because asbestos, and it would affect Ramsey Lake. Said they found a body in there. Condolences to the family. Yes, we talked about that yesterday and today. And Denise, cops attacked, property destroyed, fires, occupation, either violence. Numbers are growing. Well, we'll talk about that today on a Canada-wide scale. We have a changing dynamic of our country for sure. And Marianne, yep, disgusting. It's being allowed. Hazel says, I read this morning that Google is under the USA and not Canada. Well, Google did start in the USA as a corporation, so that is where its headquarters is, and I believe it's an American corporation to begin with that now has global, footprints all over the place. So Dan Bongino and Kash Patel got their marching orders when they got in government by the Zionists. Okay, that's Northern Hillbilly. There's a lot of that going on from the top. There's a lot of agendas, if you will. There's a lot of voices at the top and people controlling different aspects of different organizations. There's no doubt about that. Marianne always thought it was an American-owned company. That's Google. And good morning, Andrew. Thanks for being on. Great to see you here. And Hazel says, okay. And good morning, everyone from Collingwood. That's Liette. Hand clap emoji. When I mean Canada is recognized as the U.S. through Google. Oh, what I mean is Canada is recognized as the U.S. through Google. Okay, that's interesting. So are we assuming maybe we're going to become part of the U.S. then, just because Google already assumes that we are? That's an interesting point. And so Monique, Grand Rising, heart emoji, exclamation points. Good morning to you. And Marianne says, Canada was sold out a long time ago. We are watching in real time as things play out. And you go on to say, they can make it anything they want it to be. Remember, the click of a key. Yeah, today's day and age is really interesting. There's no doubt about it. And Canada, we know, is very, strategic. Strategic to entities outside of the U.S. that are enemies of the U.S. They want to get into Canada to do their work and their bidding against the United States. We know that at high levels. We know that a lot of work has already been done. And we'll talk about that today, how that looks. And then our own government being infiltrated. Over time, we've had the immigration policies that are just mass, like immigration coming into Canada is unprecedented. And there's reports, official reports from Canada saying that they want to increase Canada's population to 100 million by a certain date. I believe it's 2100. and they're on pace to do that with the way that we are bringing immigration into Canada. Brampton, just found out recently, is now Ontario's third largest city. It's almost up to 1 million people. I remember in the 1980s, it was less than the size of Sudbury or Barrie. Now it's the third largest city in Ontario with almost 1 million people. It just shows you the growth and the idea that when we bring in people from other countries, they don't go into, they don't just kind of evenly be distributed throughout the country. They go into certain areas. Brampton's a great example of that. It's just a point. It's just a thing. It just is a fact. So locally, yeah, the story is there was a fire in St. Joseph Hospital, and we'll find more on that. We don't really have more on how it started or what was involved. The reporter from the Sudbury Star said that they didn't see any they didn't see any fire coming out of the building. They only saw smoke, if that tells us anything. And so we'll get probably more information on what happened with that tomorrow. The city is going to be funding the Peace Tower project to the tune of $1.1 million for the housing project. The Sudbury Peace Tower, affordable housing project. So they had a finance committee meeting, and during that meeting, Ward 4 Councillor Pauline Fortune noted that the project was already being funded from the province and from federal government. So why do we need to put any funding into the building? And the city said, well, Melissa Ryu, who is planning services, she said it's because it is a deeper level of affordability. Often there can be challenges with the startup in terms of having the tenancy of the project occupied. Sometimes it can take up to a full year to achieve full occupancy. Because it is such a deep level of affordability, the project's financial viability is dependent on receiving funding from the city to help with operation costs. So it's basically the other funding that was received was for capital costs, and the city is funding the operations cost of this affordable housing project, the Sudbury Peace Tower project. So that's local news there for you. And now I want to do a bit of a deep dive into, we talked about it on the show yesterday, the new MAID. We got word that, MAID for minors, people as young as 12 years old, the government is saying that they're old enough to make a decision to take their own life with the assistance of the government and doctors. If they're suffering from mental illness, it'll take very long to come up with help. So as much as, as early as 9 months, I guess you can say it would take the earliest 9 months to get some help if you're going through, a crisis, a mental health crisis. But it can be as little as 3 months to receive MAID. So I won't talk any more about it. We have Mario for the North, and then we'll have Blender News talking about that.
Fire in their facility in Manitoba, unfathomable. And I'm just going to read this. MAID for children and teens. A special committee of MPs and senators studying MAID has recommended allowing MAID for mature minors. A mature minor is a child or a teen who is deemed capable of making a decision for MAID. This would essentially remove the minimum age of eligibility. The committee also suggested that parents may not be consulted and wouldn't need to consent to their child's death via MAID. Children are uniquely vulnerable. Canada's first priority must be to provide high-quality medical care for children. Unbelievable. MAID for mental illness is set to take effect on March 2027. Hopelessness and a desire to end one's life can be a symptom of some mental illnesses. Many Canadians struggle with their mental health. There are long waiting lists for treatment and it can be expensive. 1 in 10 will wait more than 4 months for counseling. The waiting period for MAID is only 3 months. Unbelievable. We are already hearing about people asking for MAID because they do not have the support needed to live. Unbelievable. This is now a new option and a new avenue that they want children to have instead of confronting problems and getting the required help needed from the government. This is the out. And yet they complain about our low birth rates? This is unbelievable. So someone received this message and it says, my friend who works in addiction sent me this. It's a flyer in their facility in Manitoba. Unfathomable. And I'm just going to read this. Made for children and teens.
Yeah, so I'm glad that it repeated instead of went to the next video as it does sometimes. But yeah, made for children and teens. So that's our government's answer to the suffering of our young people. We're going to offer them medical assistance in dying. So if that alone, like if you were to wake up, if you were to be, if you were, back in, let's say 1980, and you were to go to sleep and wake up and turn on the news and hear that, like just to hear this show, I guess, if you were to just watch this show and you were like from the even the 1990s, I don't know, early 2000s, I don't care, over 30 years ago. And then you just woke up and you were to listen to this stuff that's going on and be like, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. It's just bizarre. So our country, because instead of encouraging our young people, we're teaching them, about in school at a young age to question your own sex that you have at birth. And if you want to, you can change it. You can be anything you want. You can be a unicorn if you want. Very confusing to young kids. And then when they're so confused, and it's not just that, it's all kinds of things, being taught that if they're a certain color, they're evil and they should be ashamed of themselves for all the bad things they've done. Their genders could be in question. You need to question your gender. And if you're not, you don't get a parade. And then once you're all confused and you're full of mass confusion and not knowing what to do, your mental health is suffering. Well, we can offer this medical assistance in dying for you as early as 12 years old and not tell your parents about it. What would you think of your country? What would you think has happened? And then they're going to spin it. They're spinning it. And there's people out there that are buying the spin. It's only supposed to be end of life. Remember we were told that? MAID. Oh, no. It's not. It's only going to be end of life. Don't worry about it. And then everyone could see the writing on the wall. Once the door opens, then more things get in. Now we're talking about killing our children, right? So here's Blender News talking about the same thing from a different perspective.
The Canadian government is now calmly laying out the case for euthanizing children. A brochure in Manitoba with the heading Made for Children and Teens explains how a special committee of MPs and senators has recommended allowing euthanasia for what they're calling mature minors. Even more chilling, it states that parents might not be consulted and wouldn't need to give consent. Right beside it, a section on Made for Mental Illness, reminding us that while 1 in 10 Canadians waits over 4 months for counseling, the wait for MAID is only 3. This isn't a one-off mistake, it's the logical outcome of a system that no longer views death as a tragedy but as a treatment. In February 2023, a federal parliamentary committee officially recommended expanding MAID to include minors who are deemed capable of making such a decision. Their report concluded that age alone shouldn't determine eligibility for assisted death. Instead, it argued that some minors are competent enough to request their own deaths, effectively removing any meaningful age floor. Dying with Dignity Canada, or DWDC, one of the country's most influential advocacy groups on this issue, has gone even further. They've urged Parliament to lower the MAID age to, quote, at least 12, claiming these children should be presumed capable of making decisions about their own deaths, just as adults are. In Quebec, things have already crossed into dystopia. Provincial guidelines now allow doctors to administer MAID to patients who are unconscious or mentally incompetent as long as they previously gave advance consent. In defiance of federal homicide laws, Quebec prosecutors have even issued directives to protect doctors from prosecution. The slope is no longer slippery, it's vertical. Then there's Dr. Ellen Wiebe, one of MAID's most prolific practitioners, who has personally ended hundreds of lives. She describes the work as incredibly rewarding and brags hundreds is good. She avoids calling it euthanasia, reserving that term for pets, and instead prefers the sanitized label of assisted dying. This is how evil enters quietly, with sterile language and bureaucratic indifference. We've replaced compassion with convenience, therapy with termination, and healing with death. And now, the state is preparing to offer it to children. The Canadian government is now calmly laying out the case for euthanizing children. A brochure in Manitoba with the heading "Made for Children in Teens" explains how a special committee of MPs and senators has recommended allowing euthanasia for what they're calling mature minors.
Yeah, so that's the world we live in, folks. And we'll have more on that as time goes on. Can we stop this? 2027, right? And are we constantly just being given these things to keep us fighting for things that, then while other things are going on, there's so many things that we kind of have to focus on. And one of them is keeping our children alive, so the government isn't, through doctors and through healthcare professionals, meeting with our children behind our backs and offering them these procedures that the parents don't even know about. And then Johnny goes off to school one day, he's a little depressed and doesn't, tell the parents. How many times, if you have children, do you ask them, how was your day at school? And the response to that. It was good. And then the bedroom door shuts and they go in their room. That's the life of a teenager. You've been there yourself, right? Your parents are like, hey, how was school today? And I know when I come home from work and my wife asks me how was work today, the last thing I want to talk about was how work went. I'm at home to get away from work now. I need some time to process. But us as parents, we can't help ourselves. We have to ask them how was school, and they don't want to talk about it. So they just go in their room, and then everyone does their thing, and then maybe eventually they'll come out, and we get very little interaction sometimes at that age. And that's the age that they're saying is going to be fine for them to make up their own mind if they want to off themselves with the government's help. It's sick. So I'll just come out and call a spade and say it's sick and you should be ashamed of yourselves. Shame on you. Really? Look in the mirror. You don't want to call it euthanasia. You want to reserve that for animals. And it's great. Did you kill hundreds of people? It makes you feel good. I call that a serial killer myself. You can call it whatever you want. But yeah, there's big problems going on in Canada. That's not the only thing. If we were to list all the things going on in Canada, it's so corrupt. It's like we need to turn communist so that way we don't have any media exposure of these things going on behind the scenes. Because it's like we're operating as a communist country, yet we still have people out there talking about stuff. So it's like Twilight Zone. So we need to really crack down and just say nothing to see here. And you go to jail if you talk about anything. That's where we're heading, right? And so we've been infiltrated. And we just had a recent interview with the head of the FBI in the United States, compromised or not, or whatever agendas are going on. The reality is we have drugs coming in from China into the ports in Vancouver. We're making, we're actually processing the drugs here. We're taking the raw materials, bringing them into the country. We're processing it in Canada, and then we're delivering it across the borders. And there's many actors involved in that. And it is a concern, regardless of who's behind it all, right? I think it's just good to be aware that that's going on. And there's a really great interview here with Sam Cooper, who's one of the best journalists. He's a Canadian rock star when it comes to journalism. And here he is talking with Candace Malcolm of the Candace Malcolm Show about that interview and about the situation. Sam Cooper, journalist of integrity. He is a real journalist, goes out and gets real stories and is not compromised. And he's known for looking into these international actors and what's behind things. So anyways, enough of me. And here's the interview.
It's just like unbelievable that this is happening under our nose. And it's not like we have no idea that it's happening. Obviously, you've been reporting on it. And so it's just like, I don't know if the authorities are asleep at the switch or if somehow they're in on it or if they would just rather ignore it. But I do want to play, first we'll play this clip of FBI Director Kash Patel. So he's speaking on Fox News's evening report with Maria Bartiromo, apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, and he is specifically talking about how they've sealed the southern border. The southern border is secure, but that the fentanyl is still flowing from Canada. Let's play that clip.
In the first 2-3 months that we've been in the seat under Donald Trump's administration, he has sealed the border. He has stopped border crossings. So where's all the fentanyl coming from still? Where's the trafficking coming from still? Where are all the narco traffickers going to keep bringing this stuff into the country? The northern border. Our adversaries have partnered up with the CCP and others, Russia, Iran, on a variety of different criminal enterprises, and they're going and they're sailing around to Vancouver and coming in by air.
Now, Sam, I've had you on my show many times. I think that you said that verbatim on my show maybe 2 months ago about those Vancouver ports. And so, I mean, walk us through that.
Absolutely. That's what I got from Director Patel's statement. I had reported previously, again, a CBSA whistleblower said that there was a massive amount of stolen passports. I believe it was connected to Russia's invasion of Ukraine years ago, and Canada's government knew that many of those stolen passports were used by threat actors to enter Vancouver's port. I had also told you that Vancouver's port is wide open to fentanyl precursors coming in. Something like only 1% of the containers that come into Vancouver's port, this is the 4th busiest in North America, are searched. And on top of that, I had reported the documented concern. It's been known for years that Chinese organized crime actors with connections to Chinese military entities of the same type that are operative in Panama have significant activity in Vancouver's port, along with Iranian threat actors. And of course, the local Hells Angels are in the mix there too. So it's almost a surreal feeling or sense that we now have the director of the top counterintelligence agency coming out overtly and saying the exact same things I'm reporting. And Candace, I would add, another major story I broke was, you'll remember the Danforth shooting of 2018. There were indications that there could be terror links, but the Toronto police and Ralph Goodale, Trudeau's public safety minister, said those indications were false, not supported. Hold on a second. I reported based on a senior former DEA investigator that told me the American government did not buy that conclusion. They found concerning links between the shooter in Toronto and a major carfentanil seizure in a nearby suburb.
His brother, right? I remember the story.
It's a deep story. His brother went into a coma from handling carfentanil. 40 kilograms were seized in a Toronto suburb, largest seizure of carfentanil ever. American authorities wanted just a couple of grams to search it to see, they were concerned, could this be a weapon of mass destruction? Could there be a terror link? They found a linkage to Pakistan that concerned them. The RCMP completely shut them down, would not share a single gram of that seizure. And so what does that point to? I'm told that the U.S. government said, of course, there was a Chinese supplier involved and there could be a Pakistani threat network, and the Canadian government would not cooperate with the U.S. government. So this, in my view, when I was hearing Kash Patel, I almost heard that case resonating without being said.
Well, if we could just take a minute to double click on that, because I was writing and reporting with the Toronto Sun at that time, Sam, and I recall, it's been several years now since I refreshed my memory on the case, but I do remember a police report where they went in and they interviewed the parents, and the two parents of this young man who they claim was mentally ill, even though he was working a job at a local supermarket. So he wasn't like severely mentally ill like the legacy media pretended that he was. But the basically his parents were both interviewed, and they were interviewed separately, and their answers contradicted each other. They were asked whether he had spent time in Pakistan, and I believe his father said yes, and his mother said no, he's never been to Pakistan. And then it turned out that he attended a radical mosque in Toronto. He had gone to Pakistan. There was a lot of very disturbing things that the police just refused to look into. The legacy media decided that they were the victims of the Danforth shooting, the family, and that we had to rally around the family of the terrorist, and that we couldn't call him a terrorist. And I remember the point, I've never disclosed this before, but the Toronto Sun, my employer at the time, would not let me report on it anymore because they didn't want me to go down this rabbit hole. They were worried about getting sued. And basically they just said, Joe Warrington's covering the story, no one else can write about it. And I was banned from writing about this story. Even though I think it was a huge public interest, I think that the police were misleading the public, and the legacy media were absolutely complicit in it all.
I'm happy to dive into this with you, Candace, because I didn't cover it at the time, but it did strike me that there were some very concerning indications. People were not even focused on the fentanyl issue at the time, but come on, 33 restricted weapons, 40 kilograms of carfentanil, 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. And you're right, the media, it seemed, came up with the idea that the families were the victims there. And so this is what struck me when a DEA source, we're talking a person that's investigated everyone from terrorists to El Chapo, reached out and said, Sam, at the Bureau, you've been hitting the nail on the head in ways that we cannot speak of because this is classified information. The dots you're connecting on the Chinese Communist Party and international threat works are exactly true. And he told me he was very bothered. He pushed through the Pentagon and U.S. intelligence agencies to get more cooperation from the RCMP on that case. And as he told me, multiple times, the U.S. government was shut down by high-level bureaucrats in Ottawa. Other shocking findings. They said they found food dye. That is, the local police at least shared some photos of that seizure. And this led the DEA to believe this product could have been, parceled out for mass trafficking to young people. And yet we never read that in the Canadian media. Another major point, I pressed my source, Donald M. People can look him up. He's an extremely high-level investigator with the DEA. He's worked U.S. military intelligence. He said, Sam, we found links in Pakistan that are extremely concerning. I said, link to terror? He said, I won't tell you any more than it was extremely concerning, indirect links to terror. I'm not sure if anyone is happy that I've reported this, but look, after I broke that story, Candace, I can share this with you as a little bit of news nugget. A Canadian intelligence source reached out to me and said, you are right, there was an ISIS link to that whole case, and it was covered up. The prosecutors didn't want to go after it. I'm not sure if that's a headline. I haven't reported it yet, but since you have background on the story, I think it's fair and the right time for me to share it with you. There's a lot more to this story, and I was told that, of course, we don't know what was brought up in the White House with Mark Carney, Melanie Joly, and Dominic LeBlanc, and our then public safety minister, Mr. McGuinty, and J.D. Vance and President Trump, but I was told that carfentanil case may have come up. I don't know if it did, but I'm told certainly it's of concern.
Well, it's very interesting. And just in case the audience doesn't quite remember, this was a horrific shooting that happened back in 2018 on the Danforth, which is a popular street in basically adjacent to downtown Toronto. It's known as Greektown. And a mentally deranged person came and shot, and it seemed like he was aiming at girls. I think there were 2 young girls that ended up dying from this. And it came out like a day or two later that the shooter a family spokesperson came out, first of all. This family spokesperson was a known like NDP operative, and he came out and said that the shooter was mentally ill. He was deceased, that he was mentally ill, and that it wasn't terrorism, it was just mental illness. And the legacy media just bought that like hook, line, and sinker. And then after that, it was like, no one can talk about this, or you are a racist bigot who's Islamophobic. And again, at the time, it was the Toronto Sun. Look, Joel Warrington is one of the best reporters in Canada, and he did a great job covering this. But the fact that my newspaper didn't want me to be talking about this issue at all, they basically banned me from writing about it. And the more that I was digging, I was also in communication with people in the scene, people who were even relatives of these poor young girls that lost their lives. And people weren't buying what was being sold, but it was, all working together. The police chief said none of this Islamophobic stuff. Like anyone even asking questions about the ties to radical Islam that was, that we're talking about near the height of ISIS and the Syrian refugee crisis and all that kind of stuff happening. And we were just told to stop talking about it and move on. And it was shocking to see the legacy media just go along with that. I'm so pleased that you kept digging on it, because I did for a while and then I stopped. But I agree that there is a lot more to that story. And I'm glad you brought up the Oval Office exchange as well, because I found this quite interesting, right? During the election campaign, Mark Carney didn't really talk about fentanyl. He didn't really talk about the border. He kind of ignored Donald Trump's prodding on this issue. Actually, we have a clip. First, I'll show this one. This is from February 12th, 2025, when Mark Carney is sort of new to the scene. And he says that Canada does not have a fentanyl crisis. Let's play this clip.
Fentanyl is an absolute crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis there.
So totally different tone from Mark Carney after he wins the election. This is him in that Oval Office meeting that you just mentioned with President Trump and J.D. Vance and others on May 6th. And here, Prime Minister Carney is thanking Donald Trump for his leadership and saying that Canada is also focused on cleaning up our border and cleaning up our fentanyl issue. Let's play that clip.
Thank you for your hospitality and above all for your leadership. You're a transformational president, the focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl and other opioids, and securing the world. And I've been elected with my colleagues here, with the help of my colleagues here. I'm going to spread the credit to transform Canada with a similar focus on the economy, securing our borders. Again, on fentanyl, much greater focus on defense and security, securing the Arctic and developing the Arctic. And the history of Canada and the U.S. is we're stronger when we work together, and there's many opportunities to work together. And I look forward to, addressing some of those issues that we have, but also finding those areas of mutual cooperation so we can.
So, Sam, what did you make of Mark Carney's sort of reversal? All of a sudden, he's praising Trump and saying that fentanyl is a big issue after denying it. And I really didn't hear him talk about that much on the campaign trail at all.
It's really a stunning clip, because pretty much every word that Mark Carney said would be something that the Bureau would have written about. And in many podcasts, I would have advocated this is the stance Canada needs to take, or else our sovereignty is in deep danger. We need to acknowledge to the United States that Canada is a big part of the solution here. And, we need to step up to the plate. So essentially, if that was Mark Carney's real intention, I'd be very happy. In fact, I would have thought that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, that was more their campaign message, which Mark Carney just reflected. And as I'm, I have a long career in the Canadian media, I would call myself a good analyst of their coverage. I found that Mark Carney, his Prime Minister's office operatives, and the media that are very friendly with them had the exact opposite of the narrative that he had just said to Donald Trump in that meeting. And that was to deny that Canada is a big problem on fentanyl, to say that the U.S. is unfairly targeting us, and essentially, to use the vernacular, big orange man bad, Canada good. Why is he picking on us? So I just think, really my thoughts are that raises the theme that what we're hearing from Mark Carney, what comes out about his private phone call to President Trump beforehand, telling him, you're a transformative president. I'm going to be hitting you during the campaign, but don't worry. That's just kind of That's just for the public. Look, I think that's what's happening, and that's what's reflected in those White House comments.
Okay, but I am curious about the action on this, right? So you have Carney in the White House sort of saying to Trump what Trump wants to hear. And then 2 weeks later, you have President Trump's FBI director, Kash Patel, that Trump individually selected, coming out and saying, it's happening in your country. All of our adversaries are working together through this port of Vancouver. Like, do you think that Mark Carney will take action? And it's an interesting thing that's happening, right? Like, under the Trudeau government the last decade, the bureaucracy has grown significantly, right? It's not like they have reservations about hiring new government agents, right? Why don't they have more people monitoring these ports of Vancouver? Why is it just 1%? I mean, even after sort of publicly getting humiliated in some ways, like the FBI director calling us out saying, we know what's happening. It's happening right here, guys. Like, get your act together. Do you think that Mark Carney will actually take some action here and start cracking down on this?
I think it will take tremendous and increased pressure from the United States. It's a very complex subject, but if I'm extremely brutally honest, I don't think the Canadian government will take action unless forced even harder by Washington. Why do I say that? I've been told by senior U.S. government sources that for years in private meetings with elite Canadian officials of the type that, could include Bill Blair, Dominic LeBlanc, senior RCMP, commissioner level, the U.S. government brings up concerns that Mexican cartels have been growing in Canada since the Trudeau government removed visa requirements. And the U.S. government was met with denials and met with sort of polite Canadian handshaking, we'll get on it, and nothing happens. And so when you saw the tariff threats and you see something like $1 billion, the figure was raised in terms of beefing up Canada's border patrol, buying some helicopters. Again, I just think this is press releases and sort of, indications of action that doesn't really lead to results. Why do I say that? In order to really crack down on Chinese Communist Party operatives, which my sources indicate use Canada as command and control for the Western Hemisphere in many ways, and the Mexican cartels and Iranian threat networks that I'm saying are strongly set up in Canadian cities, Canada would have to reform its criminal act and get a sort of an anti-racketeering law. We need to beef up our foreign interference laws. We need to, as I've written, port police were taken out of the Vancouver port. Jean Chrétien's government was warned 20 years ago by an association of police chiefs saying we've got a major vulnerability. Chinese organized crime and intelligence is taking over in the Vancouver port, and nothing was changed. So those are, I would say, 3 action items that if Mark Carney was really serious, he could come out on, in a big press conference next week and say, we're doing this, this, and this. He could do one of his sort of fake
executive orders,
signing executive orders and saying we're getting a racketeering law. He'd really have to put it through Parliament, but I would applaud that theater if he did it because it would show he's really going to act. Right now, I'm sorry to say, I just see the usual liberal sort of nicety, pleasant words and kicking the can. I don't think that they will crack down on this unless extreme pressure continues to be brought on them.
Now with Sam Cooper on the Candace Malcolm Show, he's got the last word. I don't need to add anything to that. Very well spoken, and he gets his facts straight. He is a reporter with a long history of reporting on these issues, and basically you can look into anything that he's said. Go back and watch his interview, and if you don't think his reporting is reputable, and he's reporting on the right things, you can look into it yourself. So that's all the time we got for the show today. We're going to have Mike Perrant on the show, Ward 5 councillor here in the greater city of Sudbury. We'll have him on the show. We'll have some great questions for him, and some of them might be yours if you send them to me before the show at sudburynews@gmail.com, or message me on Facebook, Messenger, Sudbury News, and on Facebook. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Make sure to like, share, stay aware, and take care. And stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. Ciao for now.
on the morning shift.